Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Week number 7. Can you believe it's already been 7 weeks since we started this high performance conversation? Crazy. Time moves very quickly. Week number 7, high performance habit number 6. We talk about demonstrating courage. Before we dive into it, I acknowledge you and I credit you for being here right now, today. You're still watching. You're here, still listening. You're showing up, and you're showing up for you. I know that you're not here for me. I appreciate the support, but you're here for you. This is for you in your life and the benefit that this information, these conversations, these ideas, these practices have been developing in some of your lives. Amazing. You're showing up. And it ties into our conversation today because in order to show up to something consistently, there needs to be a certain thing present. Commitment. And in order for commitment to really exist, there needs to be courage backing it. Would you agree that when you commit to something, there is now a level of accountability? You now have you've given yourself a promise to yourself and to somebody else, a promise to accomplish something. You've committed to something. You've put courage behind your back and it's propelling you forward. Now this conversation is a little bit different than the past we've had because in order to define courage, it's very subjective. What is courageous to one person may be everyday life to another. We take a look, for example, at a cop, at a policeman. Every single day, they're out there. They're making sure everything's being in a safe way. There's nothing really causing any issues. There's no danger. For that, right there, that is an act of courage to me because I'm not out there doing that every single day. We can put it in a more extreme way. We have someone that jumps out of an airplane, whether it be for work, whether it be for fun. While I'm sure their body experiences the same emotions now, maybe 100 jumps later than it did the first time, now that level of fear, that fear-inducing emotion may not be as strong because they've gotten used to it. Same thing with the policeman, same thing with the fireman. See, when you do something consistently enough, you get comfortable with it. The more you do something, the less stress you have towards it. The less stress you have towards it, we can say, the more courage somebody has. Because they're now, even though that fear exists, they're stepping through that action without actually letting the fear stop them. Which is the way that in this broad conversation today, let's look at courage that way. Courage is not acting because fear is missing. And if we look at it, fear is this experience. And if it wasn't for fear, who knows if it'd still be around right now? Who knows where human beings would be if it wasn't for fear? Fear is actually one of the most progressive forward tools that we can start to use. We can hack it. We can use it to our benefit instead of our detriment. How? By making sure, by being aware when the fear shows up, it's usually because you're about to get uncomfortable. You're stretching beyond what is normal to you. And in that beyondness, when you're stretching beyond what you know, you're now stepping into new territories. You're stepping into new realms. And in order to do so, there needs to be a level of courage there. Would you agree? So let's start to define that as courage. The ability to act in spite of fear. The ability to act in spite of uncertain outcomes. The willingness to take action regardless of what may happen afterwards. Now, if we do that consistently enough, that specific action that first induced fear, over time, it's gonna become more normal. You're gonna start building up your courage. You're gonna start feel more courageous. Can you see how this whole thing starts to unravel? It's almost like it's a very cyclical experience. The more you do something enough, the less fear you have with it, the more courage you develop. And again, it's not that you have less fear of it, it's that you're acting in spite of it, so the fear doesn't stop you. Now, in order for us to start to look at what is this experience of demonstrating courage, how can we start to demonstrate courage at every single day in our lives, we need to see what is courage for us. And as we're talking about this, we start to look, how can you now start getting aware of what is courage to you? How can you start to develop for yourself this self-awareness of where is that limiting, where is that boundary, where is that comfort zone? We can start to look at self-reflection. And this is a very powerful tool Because if we start to look on our day-to-days, I promise you, you've already been taking some actions out of courage. You've already been doing some things that you've been afraid to do, but you're still doing them. And you're still taking the action regardless of the fear. That is you taking action. That is you being courageous. Now we can also see, if we start to look at that reflection, we'll start to see that we may have also stopped ourselves because of fear. And that is okay. You're a human being. That is not a problem. We start to see at what can we implement now in the future. So when that particular experience comes up again, we don't allow fear to stop us. We can push through it. We can act through it. Allow courage to move us forward. Personal reflection. Try it out. Every single day, write out some things that you did today that you wouldn't have done yesterday. What are some experiences that brought you fear yet you still took action on them? What are some things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that you can start to continually evolve past your current comfort zone? The boundaries that now hold you back. That right there is when we start to look at courage. You start to live courage, not just be this conceptual experience, you start to be courage. Now, when we look at courage, we start to see that there's a couple different things present. There is the possibility of risk. There is an intended outcome, and then there's the action. So with these three things in play, when we have courage, we have the possibility of risk. Something may go wrong. Now, in order for something to go wrong or right, there needs to be an action to it. There needs to be an action being taken forth, which brings us to now 4 types of fears that we start to look at in our lives. Number 1, we start to look at physical. Physical is very simple. We can look at physical fear like this. Physical fear is maybe you jumping in front of a car to save somebody from getting hit by another car. Maybe this is you, like the policeman or the fireman, running into the house to make sure there's nobody in the house that is burning down right now. Maybe you hear somebody on the streets calling for your help. You have no idea what's out there, but you still rush out because you, at that point in time, you act. There's courage. Physical courage. 2, moral courage. Now, moral, this is like this. This is almost like, and again, this is very subjective because this is where we start to look for the individual. What do you stand for? What are the things, what are the values, what are the beliefs that you're standing up for? To look up in the simplest way, moral courage is this. You see somebody getting bullied at school. You see somebody getting bullied out on the street. You see maybe a woman being physically abused by a man. Now, this right here, this is for you to say, that doesn't work for me. That I'm gonna take an action on because that doesn't work for me. That is not okay. This is like doing the right thing. When you do that, you're acting out of moral courage. Number 3, we have psychological courage. And this, again, is for every single individual to define. Psychological courage, this is the things that scare us. These are the things that maybe we don't want to go on a roller coaster because we're afraid of heights, but we do it. There's courage to that. Or maybe you don't want to have your conversation with your boss because you're afraid of what may happen, but you still do it. There's courage to that. Maybe you have the conversation you need to have with your spouse that you've been putting off for too long. There's courage to that. The psychological courage allows us to step beyond the boundaries of what we know is normal. We can step through the fears, through the insecurities, through our personal anxieties. Which brings me to my last type of courage, everyday courage. And look, we do courageous acts every single day. Some of them have more of an impact than others, but we are acting out of courage consistently. We don't notice them because they're so normal now. Do you drive? Think about that. Have you ever considered driving an act of courage? Well, frame it this way. You're getting into a box of metal and you're driving 50 to 80 miles per hour and you don't know who the person next to you is or what they're going through. But yet, you're driving. Is that courage? For sure. That is absolutely courage. Are you kidding? How could you expect that to not be courage? You're getting into a metal box and you're driving this thing at 50 to 80 miles per hour. that in itself, besides the people around you, that in itself, something may happen with the car, something may be wrong with the roads. You don't know, but it's this act of courage that really makes the biggest difference because you still take the action. Everyday courage. Now, just as there are different types of courage that exist, we start to look at, there are different definitions, there are different circumstances, there are different conditions that define an act as being courageous or not. One of them is intention. What is the intention with which you're acting? Is the intention, for example, of someone getting bullied, are you going to help the person getting bullied so that you get praised? Because if that's the case, are you acting out of courage at that point? This is what you start to see for yourself. What are the intentions of what I'm doing? Am I trying to help people for the sake of helping people? Am I trying to step beyond my comfort zone because of my personal standards? Or am I trying to look good in front of another? Courage, not courage. Second thing, results. What are the results of what you're doing? These results, we can start to see, start to show the level of courage with which we act. Are you being consistent and persistent enough to actually achieve something? Now let me paint the picture to you in this way. Sorry for the morbidity. Someone that steals. You got a burglar, right? There's some courage to that. There is uncertainty. They have no idea what's gonna come. They have no idea who the person behind the door is or what they're about to, or who they're about to try to rob, right? There's some uncertainty, there's courage to that. However, what is the result of their action? Is the result of their action for the greater good? No. So would you consider that courage? It's not. So if we can take on these concepts of courage, we can really start to define them for ourselves. There's no way we can define courage in a definite way. For this conversation, I'll say taking an act of courage is acting in spite of fear. Fear is not gonna go away. We don't want fear to go away. It actually allows us to see when we're growing. Acting in spite of fear is acting in courage. You then start to see, how is that courageous act for myself different for me? We can look at that again. We can start to look at the different types of courage. The physical, the moral, the psychological, the everyday. What are the intentions? What are the results? If we can start to become aware of these things, we can start to define courage. Now look, when it comes to high performance, courage is the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone habit. Why? Because when studied, high performers that showed a higher level in courage, that rated themselves at a higher level in courage, also were shown to have higher levels in other area of high performance. Now, this isn't to say that because you have courage, you're a high performer. No, this is to say that if you have courage, you are more than likely also firing these other habits at a high level. Or you may not, and if you're not, that's okay. You have some areas to work on. If you're looking to live a life of sustained, heightened levels of success, full of engagement with the people in your life, with yourself and the people around you, this is the kind of stuff you gotta get to work on, the intentionality to them. You need to be intentional, practice day after day, put up notes, set up reminders on your phone, whatever you gotta do, remind yourself of these habits. Because what's the cost if you don't? Let's just look for this one, courage. What is the cost if you don't? You have to have this conversation with your boss. What's the cost if you don't? There's this conversation you gotta have with your spouse. What is the cost if you don't have the conversation? You gotta make one more sales call. What is the cost of not making that one more sales call? We can look at everything from the personal, the professional, the interpersonal. Courage and acting out of courage is costing or is bringing you a benefit to you. The question is, do you know what courage means to you? Have you been reflecting on that, giving yourself the credit on a day-to-day basis because you have been acting out of courage, you just may not have seen them. Folks, thank you for being here. It's been 7 weeks, 6 high performance habits. I hope that you've taken some action on these. I know some of you have, and I know some of you are seeing a lot of different results in your life. Amazing, congratulations, way to show up, way to play the game. If you found this information valuable, share this. Go to the worksheets, there's more stuff on there for you to get deeper into this conversation. Share this with the people in your life. Whoever you see this kind of conversation will make a difference with. And while this high performance habits conversation has come to a conclusion today, I'm gonna be with you. I'm gonna be here weekly, sharing some ideas, some concepts, some consistent practices so that we continue to expand and beyond. Because here it is. We as human beings are here, in my experience, to continually expand ourselves in order for us to continually expand the evolution of human species. That is our responsibility, that is my duty, that is the way in which I have chosen to see the purpose of my life. And I thank you for being here because you're helping me fulfill that mission. There's a lot more work to do. Thank you for showing up, keep showing up, share this with other people in your life, and I love you. God bless.